Guys, we are going to make our enrichment portion of our print portfolio. Before you get started, you want to look at the sheet that you've been given, the final portfolio guide, and you should have made a folder called your first last name 1718. So you should have made that on the desktop. You just right click the desktop and say File, New Folder, and then you can right click and say Rename and rename it that. Now inside of the folder you need to have all of these projects, okay? So these are the ones that you've completed, and we want to save them as JPEG versions or for our website PNG versions. So we want to take all of those pieces and put them in the folder. So I already have my folder put together. Heidi Varela, my first and last name, 1718, no spaces. Again, if you need to rename it, right click, rename. And so inside you could see that I have all of my pieces as JPEGs. I shouldn't have any native files. So for instance, this is a native file. I don't want any of those. I need only JPEGs, or for our website we need to have PNGs. So how do you make a native file into a JPEG? So in Photoshop, you want to make sure that if you don't want to have a PSD in here. So if you have a Photoshop file, so I can open up a recent document that's a Photoshop file. It has .psd. That means that it's a native file to Photoshop. I need to save this as a JPEG. So I need to say File, Save As, and I need to go to Format, and I need to save it as a JPEG. And then I also need to go to my desktop, find that folder that has my works in it, and save the JPEG version into that, and hit Save, and hit OK. Okay, now I have a JPEG version in here, and that's all I want to have in here is JPEGs, and for my website I want to have PNGs. So let's pretend that you have your Wix website up, and how to make PNGs of your website. I'm going to go to just my Digital Arts 116 website, and I want to take a snapshot of the website that I've created. I actually want to create a screenshot. So what I'm going to do is hit Shift Command 4. That brings up this little target here, and then I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to click and drag over the entire browser, and it took a picture. You'll hear the shutter, like as if you're taking a picture on a camera. And now if I look on my desktop, there's my screenshot. Okay, so now I can put that into my first last name folder. And the only thing is that it's not labeled. So I'm going to right click and rename it. And you have to just be aware of, after you put the pieces in, that you actually want to name them correctly. So this is my website. That's my home page. So I need to label it as this. So I'm going to right click and say rename. So it's supposed to be my first name, last name, home page. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And the screenshot is automatically a PNG. So if I right click and I get info, we can see that it's a PNG. I don't have to write .png, and a screenshot is going to automatically be a PNG. So you need to do that for your home page, your about page. So all of those things need to be in this folder before you get started. Okay, so now where do I find the file to put all of these pieces in? You're going to go to the server, so you're going to look for that digital icon on the desktop. If you don't see that, hit Command K, and you'll see this pop up, and then just hit connect if you don't see it on your desktop. So mine's there already. I'm going to go to the photo folder, and I'm going to go to the photo 1 portfolio folder, and these are all the files that I'm going to need. First, this is a PDF version, so I saved it after I made my version. So this is just an example of what mine looks like as a PDF exported. This is what yours will look like when you're all finished. Just so you can kind of get, I just put some placeholders there so you know, oh, these are the kind of projects that I need to put in my portfolio. So what I want to do is take this folder, and I'm going to make a copy of it, and I'm going to paste it to the desktop. And it's replacing mine. So this is my version. So I'm not going to be working off the server. I'm going to be working off my desktop. It's copying over. Okay, and I'm going to right click and rename this. So I'm going to name it my first and last name and final portfolio. Now, your computer might not have the same fonts that I do. So you need to go to your Documents fonts here, and you need to double click on each of these and make sure they're installed. So you would just double click and say install font. I already have it installed, so it's going to give me that warning, and you're going to do it for every single font here so that these fonts are now on your computer. So you have to do that first, okay? After that, you're going to double click the INDD file. This is an InDesign file, and you're going to launch it. And you're going to say OK if it says it's missing some links. All right. And here is the template for you to get started with. So a couple of things about InDesign. How am I going to place my pictures into InDesign? So you're going to take my pictures and get rid of them. So I'm just selecting and deleting them with the selection tool. And now I have to file place my pictures here. So I'm going to go to File and then Place. And then I have to find that folder that has all of my files in it. So I'm going to go to my first last name, 1718. And I need to put my icons. Okay, so I need to find my woman icon, open, and place. Okay, now notice that this is way too big. I need to scale it down. So unlike Illustrator and some other files, you can't just simply click and drag from the corner. What that does is it actually crops the image. So what you need to do to change the size of an image in InDesign, you actually have to right-click the image, transform, and scale it. So it's telling me that currently the scale of this photograph is 100%, and I want to make it less to make it smaller. Or if you want to make it twice as big, you'd make it 200. So I'm going to try changing it to 50%, which is half the size. Notice that it's locked here, so it's going to make it proportionally half the size, and I can hit preview. And that's still kind of big, so I might actually go back down to 40%. And that looks like a good size to me. And then I'm going to hit OK. The only thing is that this is actually rotated the wrong way. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and rotate it. And, oh no, this is men's, so I got to rotate it the other way. And then this is going to go down here. And now, if I click and drag from the corners, I do actually want to crop it. And there it is. So it's cropped here. Now the only thing is I actually put a border on mine. That's totally up to you. I just went up here and I added a black border around it. So I file place the image. And now I got to do that for all the other ones. File, place, file, place. Now, after you place the images, you right-click, transform, scale. You want to make sure that when you're moving the picture that you're moving it from anywhere in here, okay? If you grab the image from the middle, you'll see this little hand icon, and it will actually move the image inside the box. You don't want to do that, okay? So make sure that you do not grab an image from the middle, because again, it will move it inside of this cropped box. Do not do that. So I'm going to do it again just because maybe some of you guys are like, whoa, that was really fast. Okay, so let's place another image. Maybe I'll replace this one, pretend I'm replacing it with my own. I'm going to hit File. Ooh, it's thinking. Give it a second. So I'm going to File, place the image. File, place. I'm going to find my folder. I'm already in that folder. I'm going to find my first rules of composition picture and place it. Again, it's way too big, so I'm going to right-click, transform, scale. Right-click, transform, scale, and 40% is a little too small, so I'm going to try 50% and hit preview, and that's pretty good, and I'm going to hit OK. And again, remember that I'm moving it by grabbing it from anywhere in here, and if you need to crop it, you're just clicking and dragging from the side. So that's the only difference between it. I could probably right-click and transform the scale again to make it like 90%. And just click on the preview. Okay, maybe 92%. So it's not, you know, perfect. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so that's how you do that. File, place. All right, so what you need to do is you're going to go to each page and you're going to put in your information. So I put in my initials here. So you need to change it to, I'm just going to say that I'm John Doe, and then I would need to change this to John Doe. And then you have a URL to your Wix site. So you actually need to change the URL here of what you're website is. Okay, then you're going to go to the next page and you're going to say what software you're actually fluent in and stuff like that. So these are the softwares that you've used this year, except for Adobe Muse. You could say Wix Web Builder, because we're not using Muse this year. It's being discontinued, so we decided to last minute not do it here. These are skills that you've gotten from the class. This is some of the knowledge that you possess now from the class, and you might have been in some of these shows. So if your work was displayed in these shows, then you should list them here. If your work wasn't in those shows, then you need to delete that. Okay? Then you're going to go to your About Me section, and you need to change it to your information. So I wrote kind of an example of what you should be writing. You need to delete that and replace it with your own. Okay. So then this is our table of contents. This is going to be the last thing that you want to do, because you might be deleting pages depending if you've done a project or not. So you might actually have to delete a page. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to pretend that John Doe did not do the darkroom photogram and John Doe did not do the digital imaging ink blot. So what you would need to do is on the right side you should see a palette that says pages, and you're going to scroll down to that page that has the photogram and the darkroom. And I'm just going to select it and then hit the trash can, and that's going to delete that page. I'm going to do the same thing for the photogram page and hit delete. Now the idea of this is now I need to go to my table of contents, page 3. I no longer have page 20 and 21. I have to delete that. And that would go for any of these pages. Maybe you skipped a complete project altogether. So you need to delete that page and then change it. Now let's say that you didn't do the punk art one and you're deleting 13. Notice that now this has to be 13 and this has to be 14. So that's why you want to do table of contents last. Do that after you've already placed all these things. Okay. Now, under each of the projects, I've written an example of a statement. You need to write statements for your own work. Okay. So I've kind of helped you out for this project. We learn how to do these things. Okay. So you might be able to keep that, but you have different things you took pictures of. And you have to say in this picture at the top, you can see I demonstrated the rules of what, like what did you actually demonstrate, or what is the picture of? You have to talk about your piece. You cannot leave the statements as is because it doesn't apply to your work. So I've tried to help you out with each one to kind of give you an idea of what you could be writing about, but you have to put your pieces in there and you have to write about your own. Otherwise, you can't just leave that, or else if somebody actually, you submitted this portfolio at an interview, they'd be like, well, this paragraph has nothing to do with this piece in the work. Okay, now let's pretend that you're all done. You've placed all your work here. Also note at the end of the page, you also have to put your initials again and your Wix page site, and you're all done. Now before you export this, I'm going to suggest that you go to Edit and Spelling and check spelling, because you just wrote some stuff. There's no automatic spell check like Google Docs, so go to Edit, Spelling, check spelling, and it will bring up some stuff. Now you can skip it if you're like, no, I don't need to change that, that's my initials. Okay, you can skip it, or let's pick another one. I'm going to go to Edit, Spelling, check spelling, another paragraph, and hit start, and there's nothing there. There's nothing to, here, let me make a word up, and then it will find it. So I'm going to go to Edit, Spelling, check spelling, and it's like, oh, what is this? Okay, so you're going to select it, and then usually it gives you suggestions, and you're like, oh, I meant to say tree. Then you can pick tree down here and then say change. Okay, otherwise skip it, and then when you're done, you're done, and then it will actually change those things. Or you can go in there and you can manually change it afterwards. All right, now let's pretend you spell checked. All of your pieces are in here. You can ask your teacher if it looks all right and that your table of contents is correct. Everything's here. All right, the next thing you're going to do is File, Save. Okay, save your InDesign file. And then you're going to hit File, Export. And you want to format an Adobe PDF print, because you're going to print this. And you're going to save it to your desktop, and you need to save it to Heidi Varela. And this is my print portfolio, and I'm exporting it to my desktop. And I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to hit export. And I'm going to make sure that I'm exporting all pages here. Everything else should be fine. Hit export and OK. Now it's going to take some time to export. You'll see this little jogging, I don't know, it almost looks like DJ bars of sound or something like that. That means that it's exporting. It's taking a long time to take 20 pages or whatever, compress them, put them in order. You have a lot of high-res JPEGs in there, so it's going to take some time. When that disappears, that means it should be on your desktop or wherever you're exporting it to. So let's take a look. There it is. There's my JPEG or my PDF, and here's my 20-page print portfolio. Okay. Now, before you print, you want to tell your teacher, hey, I'm done with this, and I could come back and be like, this is spelled wrong, or you're missing some pieces, this isn't right. Especially I might look for like empty pages or whatever. Okay, so once it is complete, it's been checked over, then you're going to hit File, Print. And where the printer is, yours should automatically show up as RHSL203. And you just want to make sure that you're printing all your pages, you're shrinking oversized pages, that it's portrait. It should look good over here. And then you can hit print, and it will print those 20 pages. Now say you printed, and then I tell you, oh, okay, I didn't check it. You're missing, page 19 and 20 is wrong. Then you can come over here and say, pages, I only want to print page 19 and 20. And that's only if you need to print a couple of the pages because you printed some and then you're like, oh, it doesn't look good, I need to change this. So that's only if you need to print a couple pages. Otherwise, you'll be doing all of the pages, and then hit print, and it'll print your thing. Now, after you print it, you go to your teacher, and they will give you a portfolio, and you can put all the pages in here. And then there's also a spot on Google Classroom that you can upload your PDF version, and that's when you'll get your grade. So you want to print it and take it in with your portfolio to have the rest of your life, and this is something that you should be bringing to an interview. But you also want to make sure that you're uploading this PDF to Google Classroom, because that's how I'm going to give you those enrichment points for your final. So again, this isn't mandatory for your final, but this is extra. This is how you could, improve your grade for your final. And that's it.